In this video, I'll be talking about how a master or a senior deck officer and a chief engineer or senior engineer officer should be taking over command of a ship or a vessel. I'll talk about the master first and then we'll talk about the chief engineer. So these are some of the points or checks that the master or a senior deck officer should be looking out for when taking over command of a vessel. This checklist can also be used by a chief officer. So the word master can be replaced with a chief officer, and most of the checks will apply to a chief officer as well, as he or she is a second in command of a vessel next to the master. So for a master, because it is not unusual for there to be little shared time before the departing master disappears down the gangway, a newly appointed master should consider creating his or her own checklist and carrying a notebook for recording any additional material to ensure all the important questions are answered in the limited time available. Now, of course, when you are taking over command in any position, you have an ISM checklist these days that you should be going through the checklist. You also have the relieved officers handing over notes available to you. So it goes without saying that you should be using the ISM checklist as a guideline, as well as the relieved officers handing over notes as a guide to understand what kind of questions should be asked from the officer. Apart from that, you should be carrying your own notebook, which will list your experiences, your own experiences that you have faced during the taking over or handing over of a vessel. This helps you to remind yourselves of those little or insignificant things that you may overlook but may be very important in the larger scheme of things. Alright, and I'll talk about some of these. For an example, let's talk about a password of a computer. Now, although it may be a bit insignificant in the larger scheme of things, it does become significant at a later time. Advice regarding procedures for taking over command of a ship is available from a number of sources, including the Nautical Institute publication, the Shipmaster's Business Companion in Command, a practical guide. But possibly the most complete and practical advice can be found in Michael Lloyd's In Command. Some of the suggested procedures for taking over command as a master or a senior deck officer starts with viewing the ship from the dockside before boarding. But don't expect too much in terms of cosmetic maintenance if the ship has minimum manning and a busy schedule. Concentrate on safety items such as mooring, accommodation ladder, lifeboats, etc. When arriving at the top of the accommodation ladder, get an impression of how well security, safety, and general housekeeping is being managed on the vessel. With the departing master, make sure that you check the status of all required ship certificates and surveys. If in doubt, the IMO circular provides a list of certificates and documents from which you can decide which are relevant for your ship. There should be maintained on board an updated list providing the status of all statutory surveys and due dates. Check with the outgoing master what arrangements and preparations have been made for any that are due in the near future. Make sure that you check all the certificates visually and do not only rely on the list that has been provided to you. Ensure that all the documentary evidence regarding the ISM and ISPS audit codes are being complied with and is in order. Get details about the upcoming voyage in terms of cargo to be loaded or discharged, ports to be visited, shipping agents' details, charter party requirements, or any other special requirements. Note the current state of readiness of the ship. For example, is the vessel sufficiently manned? Has bunkers been taken? Do they have water, stores? Cargo operations are carried out as per the requirements. Ship will proceed with adequate stability. Passage plan is prepared, and any identified problems with bridge equipment, engines, cargo gear, cargo spaces, etc. Check the master's accounts, that is financial accounts, and cash on board. Ask the outgoing master's advice on communication with the company. Who in the office is helpful and gets things done when pressure needs to be applied, and who should be avoided if possible. Check the official logbook and make the necessary entries. Ensure all statutory entries are up to date and signed by the outgoing master where required. Discuss any disciplinary problems on board regarding strengths and weaknesses of officers and crew, but do not be over-influenced by opinions offered unless backed by evidence. Visit the bridge with the outgoing master and examine the maneuvering diagram and pilot card. Discuss any ship handling idiosyncrasies and engine limitations. If time permits, have the outgoing master run through the operation of bridge equipment with you. Because you will have a limited amount of time, make sure that you hand over or take over in terms of your own priorities. Focus on areas that you are not comfortable with and leave the areas that you are comfortable with for a later period. Before scaling, scan through all recent communication, that is emails and faxes, to ensure that the previous master has not forgotten to pass on any important content. Have an appropriate officer give you familiarization training if you are unable to complete it with the master you relieved. This especially applies to bridge and the deck. Before sailing, also spend at least a little time with your officers and senior ratings. Get to know the chief engineer and any problems in his department. Discuss the cargo and stability status with the chief officer. Check the passage plan and condition of chart folios with the second officer and the condition of safety equipment with the third mate or any other relevant officer. Lastly, do not forget the catering department and ensure that the vessel is sailing out with sufficient provisions and food has been cooked for crew. Before sailing, also read the previous master's standing orders and make any changes you see fit. Complete as detailed an inspection of the ship as circumstances permit. Note any damage to hull or equipment and check it against damage reports. Ensure the necessary changes are made to documentation ready for outward clearance. Remember, as the master, you are the head of the ship and not only the head of the deck department. You may allow the chief officer to do his or her job with support but not interference. The chief engineer is considered the head of his own department and you should be providing any necessary support but not necessary interference. Give your attention to the running of the ship without favoring any single department. Now we talk about the taking over command procedure for the senior engineer or chief engineer. Again, I repeat myself that when you take over a vessel as a senior engineer or chief engineer, you must be using the ISM checklist as well as the relieved officer's handing over notes. That goes without saying. Other than that, you may start with reading the letter prepared by the outgoing chief engineer, that is handing over notes. He or she should then verify and discuss the following: the fuel oil, diesel oil and lube oil soundings by comparing actual figures with the logged figures. What are the voyage requirements? Have the bunkers been taken and inspected? Consumption pattern with any specific instructions. Check the oil record book, overdue certificates and surveys if any, previous spending requisition for spare parts list for critical spares of main engine. Check communication such as email and fax routines to the office, different external and internal audit reports regarding the ISM, ISPS, etc. List of precision measuring instruments and location. Competence and performance reports of current engine staff. Removal reports of last 1 year. Spare parts for oily water separator. An overboard key for oily water separator and sewage plant. Also check password for computers, records of previous trainings and drills, schedule of forthcoming trainings and drills, pressure testing dates of various systems and pipelines, last dry dock report, sea trial report, dry dock files for pending job to be done in next dry dock, crew overtime records. Last checked dates of safety systems, last checked dates of main engine, emergency appliance, safety and alarm systems and their conditions. Last testing dates of shore analysis of lube oil from different systems. Finally, the chief engineer should also get information about company's action plans regarding maintenance status of main auxiliary machinery, spares, stores, vessel selling program, random check of alarms and instrumentations and special tools required on board, sounding book, boiler water treatment files, readiness for post-trade inspections for life-saving appliances and firefighting appliances, all important checklists and forms, and finally the drawing list and recent maintenance carried out by ship staff or external workshop. Again, this list, although is comprehensive, it may have missed a couple of essential items. Feel free to add to those items in the comment section. If you feel I have missed out on any essential bits and pieces, please feel free to comment on that as well. Again, this is only to be taken as a guideline and this is not the entire list. The list may differ depending on the kind of ships and trades that your vessel is on. Remember, it's very important that you focus on the handing over or taking over of the vessel, especially as a senior officer. As a senior officer, you are answerable to not only your own department but also to the company. So make sure that you are happy with the handing over and taking over. If not, request the company for some extra time. Some of the handing over and taking over checklists may be common for a master and a chief engineer. So make sure you note down all these points. This video is only for students who are intending to appear for examinations and need some notes for answering such questions, or to an extent for practical application at sea as well. Remember, handing over, taking over also comes with experience. So make sure you note down all your experiences, good or bad, in that notebook. And these days, of course, you have laptops and iPads available to you. So make sure that you maintain files for taking over and handing over so that you avoid making similar mistakes in your handing over and taking over in the future. I look forward to receiving your comments and feedback about this video. I'll see you soon with my next video. Bye guys.